Hello, my name is David Brett. I'm the editor of the New Westminster Times. My question for you today is, am I, David Brett, a danger to democracy? Well, that's exactly what a parliamentary committee in Ottawa was told just last month. That's right. David Brett, danger to democracy. So, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a State of the Journalism and Media Sectors session of the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. It took place on March 10th. Now, a lot of people followed this specific hearing because of Travis Dhanraj, the former CBC journalist who delivered a blistering evisceration of the CBC. He talked about how he grew up as a child worshipping Knowlton Nash and always wanted to be a CBC journalist, and his dream came true. He was given his own show.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As a kid growing up in Alberta, I wasn't like most of my friends. Every night, I watched The National with Knowlton Nash. He represented a public broadcaster that belonged to Canadians. Not to power, not to party, but to the public.
But as a person of color, for whatever reason, he didn't fit ideologically the boxes that the CBC wanted him to fill, and eventually he was just forced out. What I'm about to tell you really is breaking news. Even though it happened last month, nobody knows. What I'm about to tell you is known by no various people giving testimony at this State of the Journalism and Media Sectors roundtable for Parliament to get to the bottom of what's going on in media. There was Honest Reporting Canada, the folks who push back on anti-Semitism, and there was also journalists from right here in the Westminster and the Tri-Cities area in Burnaby. It's a publication called Freshet News. So, what did they say? So, here's how it unfolded, and here's why it matters. Not only to the New Westminster Times, the story is not just relevant to me, it's not just about me, it's about the state of media, the very subject of the committee. This is going to be a story about how legacy journalists want to take down independent media. They don't think that we have a right, someone like me has the right to do journalism or any other independent journalistic outlet for that matter. So now I'm just going to read to you a couple of things. So after Mr. Dhanraj unleashed his tirade, and I'm just going to put my glasses on for a moment, I have some small print here, about the CBC, and the most shocking that really made the rounds on social media was where he said that there were 43 to 45 people that he was not allowed to have on his show. He was to steer clear of them.
Dhanraj, I'm just curious, in your other remarks, or your previous remarks, I should say, sorry, you mentioned that there was a blacklist of, I think you said 45 people who were not permitted to appear on the CBC, and that this list came down from management. Would you be willing to table that list with committee today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And this conservative politicians were consistently blocked. Well, it smacks of a conflict of interest. Well, speaking of conflict of interest, there was two journalists there, Mario Bartel and Janice Clue, who reports on the Tri-Cities area. So what did they say? So they positioned themselves as in a news desert. So meanwhile, the New Westminster Times has been reporting directly from right behind me at City Hall, going to every single city council meeting, writing stories about local news. Dozens and dozens and dozens of stories accurately and properly reporting what's going on in the Royal City. So, not according to Freshet News. So you're going to have to buckle up here. We're going to go through all the sordid details. And what I would say, and what I'm going to lay out for you, is what I believe is corruption in media. Not big national or regional media, but local media. This particular instance, I believe, is a case of corruption. So, let's get into it. So, after they gave their opening remarks, the Freshet News folks, which is basically made up of journalists that were laid off by Glacier Media when they shut down publications in this area, a question was put to Janice Clue by Member of Parliament for Mississauga Central, Liberal MP Faraz Al-Sood. He says, from your perspective as a longtime journalist reporter, could you speak to what happens to community accountability and civic engagement when local news coverage disappears? I believe you highlighted that it was dangerous to local democracy, but I'm keen to see you expand on that if possible. Very leading question. Makes you wonder if it was planted. So, Janice Clue. We became a news desert. We have news deserts and news per jurisdiction. Glacier Media closing in the middle of the federal election was quite bad. We've had people pretending to be reporters sit at the media desks at council meetings. They're reporting when we're not.
Over the past few years, certainly we've seen a significant number of community newspapers close or reduce their reporting capacity. You highlighted this in your opening remarks. From your perspective as a longtime local journalist reporter, could you speak to what happens to community accountability and civic engagement when local news coverage disappears? I believe you highlighted that it was dangerous to local democracy, but I'm keen to see you expand on that if possible.
We became a news desert. We have news deserts and news poor jurisdictions. And Glacier Media closing us in the middle of the federal election was quite bad. So we've had people pretending to be reporters sit at the media desk in council meetings, and they're reporting when we're not. So that's dangerous.
Perfect, thank you.
That's dangerous. Faraz Al-Sood, thanks. That's perfect. Thank you. So, there it is. Somebody pretending to be a reporter sitting at the media desk. Well, who was that? It's yours truly. And also, earlier when the Westminster Times launched, our trusty reporter, Amy Ham, also a reporter for the National Post, sat at the media table. But they were referring to none other than myself. So, until this video hits the airwaves, nobody knew that. That at this committee, this publication, the New Westminster Times, was thrown under the bus. Now, there was another round of questions, this time by Liberal MP Zoe Royer of Port Moody. She says, Janice, you said this is dangerous. This brings me to the matter of journalistic integrity and the journalistic code of ethics. I would like you to drill down on this, if you could, you and Mario. So, off they go to drill down on it. So we're talking about conflicts of interest. He says, and Zoe Royer further asks, journalists themselves need to be free from conflicts of interest. There can't be any exchange of gifts or favors. There is a high level of accountability. So she says, can you speak to some of those principles, she says. And Bartel says, we don't try to cultivate friendships or favors with anybody. Really?
So excited to be distributing the first 2026 edition of the Freshet newspaper, serving New Westminster, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities. Great award-winning journalists, and this is an important addition to our community. When I was 12, my first job was delivering the Columbia newspaper, and now I'm handing out the Freshet to folks.
I'm actually understanding that, just to what you said, Mario, that accuracy and verification are absolutely key. Multiple sources, that there needs to be journalists themselves need to be free from conflicts of interest, and there can't be any exchange of gifts or favors. There is a high level of accountability and transparency. Can you speak to some of these principles and how you report, and also avoiding bias, how you bring that into Freshet News?
Well, I think we do as we've always done. We stand apart. We don't try and cultivate friendships or favor with anybody. We go in there and we go in with a fresh mind as to what is being discussed, what the issues are, and you give a fair ear to all sides and report accordingly.
I'm thrilled to be handing out the inaugural print edition of the Freshet, which is an employee-owned cooperative newspaper now serving New Westminster, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities. It's the first time in English Canada we have an employee-owned cooperative that is serving local news, and this is vitally important. So pick up a copy of the Freshet. It's available now right across New Westminster, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities. Provide support if you want to make a contribution. Let's support local news. Let's support our dynamic local reporters. Let's support the Freshet in New Westminster, Burnaby, and the Tri-Cities.
So here's where the corruption comes in. Now, when they say that their candidates couldn't be heard, they're talking about the federal election that took place in 2025.
I know that there was a gap between the closure of Tri-City News, Glacier Media, and Freshet opening. And of course, the closure happened just ahead of the election. What do you feel the impact was on the electorate in making decisions in the lead up to the election? What actually happened?
As we had said in the opening, we couldn't cover candidates, and the readers were lost. They didn't know who to vote for. They didn't know where to go. And again, it was very dangerous to democracy. So having corporate media pull out in the middle of the federal election was devastating to our readers and to the advertisers and to the candidates.
Well, in a normal news cycle too, we would be there covering all candidates' meetings and bringing readers who we're there. We're kind of the proxy for people who don't go, but still may be interested. They may not be interested in sitting around for 2 hours and at a meeting, or they just weren't able to go. So we're the proxy. That's how we see ourselves. Same city council, anything we cover, we're kind of the proxy for the public. So when you are able to give a flavor for a candidate and what they said and the issues that were raised by people at all candidates meetings, that's bringing information to the larger public as well, and hopefully that then informs everybody a little bit better about when it comes to marking their ballot, which way they're going to go.
We also cover a very large.
Well, and I noticed that there was a prevalence of other sort of freelancers, journalists that we've never heard of before that were sort of taking up the space in the news desert. And I think people were then tuning into that because they were hungry. I think the electorate is particularly hungry for...
this is all the time we have for this question.
Yes.
So they're saying that, well, nobody was covering the election. No one was going to the all candidates meetings. Well, guess what? I was going, I was reporting, and it was not all that favorable to their preferred candidate. Well, who's their preferred candidate? Well, it's the NDP Member of Parliament, Peter Julian.
Question for you, Peter. On the subject of misinformation, you said in your opening remarks that you're the only candidate who lives in New Westminster, but that's not true. The Conservative candidate, Indy Panchi, lives in Queensborough. So, were you misinformed, or do you think Queensborough's not a part of New Westminster?
Now, prior to the 2025 federal election, Peter Julian posted to his social media, he says, and this is like his New Year's message, Honored to receive 2024 A-List Politician Award from the New West Record. This year, and he goes on about the NDP and all the great things they've done. A-List 2024 local politician. So, the same reporter, Teresa McManus, who now works at Freshet News, whose colleague says that I'm just pretending to be a reporter and I'm dangerous to democracy, is angry that their candidate, Peter Julian, wasn't elected. He got edged out by rookie MP Jake Sawatsky, the Liberal candidate. So really they're framing this as them being boxed out and sort of blaming us for ignoring the fact that we even exist. So, what happens next? Well, what is Freshet News? Well, I happen to have written an article about it back in June. The article is BC Unions Hungry to Get Back in the News Business. So when this organization sought to get back into the news business, who was supporting them? The unions. They held their press conference at Unifor. And they were supported by other supporters of the NDP, Johnny Sapatiak. And I'll go into that in some detail. But they did a GoFundMe. And well, gee, I wonder who was donating and giving gifts. Here's Bartel in Ottawa saying they don't receive gifts, they're not influenced, they're not chumming it up with politicians and being influenced by politicians. Completely untrue. Here's the GoFundMe page. Unifor National, $5,000. $5,000 from a very huge union. Peter Julian, $1,000. Well, that wasn't all for Peter Julian. He also was literally, now here's a little bit of a detail. The Freshet News has literally negligible, or their online social media presence barely even registers. They get almost no engagement, but they have a print version that was launched earlier this year, and now it has become a bi-monthly publication. Okay, so back to that pesky media table that the Freshet News people said was occupied by someone pretending to be a journalist. Meanwhile, they're shut down, they're out of business, there's nobody there. What's wrong with an independent news outlet covering City Hall, reporting the news? Well, it doesn't line up with the persons, the groups, the labor-backed candidates that those journalists, want to keep in power and get elected. Oh, well, that's a big accusation. What do you have to back up that? Well, hang on to your hats. I've got the proof. And here it is. This is just the first bit of the proof. There's a lot more coming. This is incredible what's going on here. A very serious story. So, May 16, 2025, the mayor of New Westminster takes to social media and says this: how destructive to our community it is when the media table at our council meeting is empty of journalists. So the denizens of New West progressive, hyper-woke social media respond to Johnstone's social media post, kind of confirming that they know exactly who he's talking about. Someone says, this sounds like something that shouldn't be permitted. Someone else says, I feel like the media table should be removed since we don't have actual media. So, we do have actual media. It's called the New Westminster Times. The New Westminster Times was started in 2022. I started it because I frankly thought that the local media was biased. It was a left-wing paper. People who are not part of the Labour slate or who support the NDP, who are more centre-right voters, were very upset about the editorial slant of the existing paper. So I thought, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to start my own newspaper. And it was prior to the 2022 election. So we've been around a while. Everybody knows who I am, and that we're not huge fans of Patrick Johnstone. So guess what happens? This is May 25th or 16th, 2025. So I show up for a council meeting on June 23rd. Guess what? The media table has been removed. It's gone. Why? Why is it gone? So the next day, I sent an email to Hania Berg, the head of the city clerk, the corporate officer, and she says, thanks for your email. I say, well, why has it been removed? She says, yes, the table in chamber was removed as it was the subject of complaints, and I don't anticipate its return. Well, what complaints? So I asked in a follow-up email, can you please advise as to the nature of the complaints? Anyway, there was a bunch of back and forth. She did confirm that there were complaints, didn't say who that was complaining or what the complaints were about, but says, thanks for your email. I'm unable to provide any further information beyond what I've already shared with you. So I got stonewalled. So at that time, last year, I didn't realize that Freshet news folks were going to get on out there and call me a danger to democracy for sitting at the media table. I didn't realize that at that time. So she further elaborated, saying that when I asked what the nature of the complaints were, she says, they were complaints of harassment. Well, I'm a pretty mild-mannered guy. All I was doing is sitting there taking notes on my iPhone. Who was I harassing? Well, what I think happened is many of the councillors are so offended by me and our reportage that they think my mere presence is a form of harassment. So, this was pretty egregious, this media table removal. So what did I do? I filed a code of conduct complaint against Patrick Johnstone for his defamatory post saying that I'm destructive to the community. That's literally what he was saying, that it's destructive to the community for me to be sitting there. So, I filed this code of conduct complaint in early June. And guess what? Never heard anything back. Nothing. Until January 30th, 2026. Jennifer Devons, the ethics commissioner, there was a big hoo-ha in Westminster where they created this new position for an ethics commissioner and rewrote the entire code of ethics. So, January 30th was the very last day that Jennifer Devons served in that position. She was replaced by Lisa Southern, formerly the ethics person in the city of Vancouver. So, the very last day, she basically dismisses my complaint, but guess why? The reasons why, and this is why I think there's this kind of, at least an appearance of corruption in the ethics commissioner's office, because she appears to be siding with the person I'm complaining about. It seems to have an appearance of political bias. So here in her decision, very brief, she says, there's nothing, however, that links these comments, the comments in the offending social media posts about me being destructive, that links these comments to the complainant or his publication. Neither the complainant nor his publication are named by the respondent at any time, and I find that it is not plain and obvious that the respondent is referring to them. So it's quite incredible that the Ethics Commissioner, everybody on Patrick Johnstone's social media feed, apparently Freshet News, as we now know, based on the March 10th testimony before Parliamentary Committee, they know they were referring to me. Were they the ones complaining? Who complained? I think it's rather... So here we have it. At the end of the day, not even the Ethics Commissioner of the Royal City Hall, in which we're standing in front of, will hold the mayor to account. Is this not dangerous for democracy? I suggest it is. So I reviewed, read very closely the code of conduct here that the Ethics Commissioner is supposed to be governed by. And there's a section here that says, if the complaint is not rejected, closed, or resolved informally within 45 days, the Ethics Commissioner must proceed with a formal investigation. The Ethics Commissioner did not do that, even though there was 8 months elapsed. No, she asked no one any questions. She could have discovered who was being referred to as the guy at the media table by simply asking the mayor or any of the half dozen or dozen city officials in the room at the time on that specific day. Didn't ask anyone any questions at all. So, does the corruption and kind of conniving stop there? Not really. It goes further. Just going back to the Parliamentary Committee. One of the groups was called Friends of Canadian Media, and they made a very large and expansive argument in favor of the Online News Act, which is what led to Facebook blocking Canadian news on Facebook. And this has devastated independent, smaller, particularly local news sites. So publications like the New Westminster Times, and I'll just go through a list of typical local news sources like North Shore News, Delta Optimist, Chilliwack Progress, Surrey Now Leader, etc., etc. Their Facebook pages look more or less like this. This is the page from the North Shore News. It says, people in Canada can't see this content. People in Canada can't see it. No posts available. They're all like that. They're all blocked. However, magically, not Freshet News. You go to their page, and they've got stories galore. Sorry, it's windy here. Their page, it's chock full of news stories. They're not blocked on Facebook. Well, that's weird. Why is that? Well, here's the reason. They're circumventing the Facebook news block by using a deceptive category descriptor. So, the New Westminster Times, when you create a Facebook page, you have to select a category. So the category that we have is category media/news company. We're blocked. We were blocked almost instantaneously upon the act coming into force. Oh, but what about Freshet News? that Zoe Royer, exalted as an example of ethics, this code of ethics and honesty in reporting. Well, guess what they have? Their category is digital creator. They're falsifying themselves, giving Facebook false information about their identity so they can publish their stories on Facebook. A digital creator on Facebook could be someone posting cat videos, boat videos, boat fails, you name it. Nature photography. Digital creator. Well, it says Freshet News right in the title. They're touting themselves all over town as a news source, but they're not a news source, so their follower count is growing. When the Westminster Times started up, our follower count was growing too. But then, wham, the block came in, all the money we'd spent building up our page and trying to create a presence on Facebook was for naught. So there you have it. You have a publication. So what's the result of all this? Well, predictably, Patrick Johnstone, the mayor of New Westminster, takes to social media earlier this month, April 3rd. He says, "Great story here. So happy we are going to have local journalism in / New West Burnaby Tri-Cities during the upcoming municipal elections, so our communities will be able to tell their stories." It's like, woohoo! So meanwhile, there's been local news journalism in New Westminster since 2022 with the New Westminster Times. Just not to his liking. We publish stories that are critical of him, say, his bike lanes. He's very much hated by a lot of people because of the bike lane kind of zealotry that he has unleashed on the town. Bike lanes that no one ever asked for. Policies and housing. But, so it's clear to see Freshet News, which is now available. Now, they don't have door-to-door delivery like the old papers had, but they are available in all the municipal buildings. You can go to the local skating rinks and municipal buildings, and there it is. You can have politicians like Peter Julian down at the SkyTrain handing them all out, touting them, promoting them.
I'm thrilled to be handing out the inaugural print edition of the Freshet.
You can get the mayor of New Westminster touting and promoting this publication. Well, why would he do that? It's obviously a clear indication of partisanship and bias. So, meanwhile, it should be known that the New Westminster Times pays a price for its journalistic efforts. We're fearless. We tell the truth. For example, after October 7th, 2023, city councils across the region were flooded with these ceasefire motions and huge crowds of keffiyeh-wearing, mask-wearing people who later it was discovered were associated with the terrorist organization Samadou.
So I'm making this in front of everyone on record. He refused to remove a threat against the public from the chamber.
If I may also add to that, this man also did put his hands on me at the beginning of the
Who?
meeting.
Which one?
This gentleman right here, I did ask
I
him not to
witnessed
touch
it.
me.
Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
I touched your shoulder to get your attention, to ask you to sit down. That's everybody who's required to sit down.
This is inappropriate.
Yep, and I
You know that
apologize.
this was
I
inappropriate.
apologize for that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we have 1 and 2. Both of you needs to be removed from the chamber.
So we just filmed the insanity as it was unfolding in council chambers, not only here, but also in Port Moody. We went down to the rallies. We filmed them saying death to Canada, death to the United States, death to Israel.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it. Death to Canada, death to the United States, and death to Israel.
These videos that we shot and published in doing our job as journalists to report were seen millions of times around the world and created policy change in Canada. We feel like we're doing our job as journalists. Well, guess what? For doing that job, a Samadoun associated gentleman set up a website just to denounce me. He says, New Westminster Community Alert, avoid the racist blogger David Brett. So if you search my name, this is one of the first web pages that comes up. So, that's the story. Now you know. There's an effort, I believe, to steal the municipal elections in a huge swath of Metro Vancouver, using a publication that is directly backed and pumped and promoted and funded by Labour. Labour and the NDP are the same thing, and politicians are just shamelessly touting it and throwing it all around. Meanwhile, we're being called a danger to democracy. They're cheating. We're not cheating. We don't receive money from unions or big corporations. We do receive donations, but there's no companies. There's no political parties. There's no politicians. It's just people like you that are watching this video. That's it. You know? And I thank you. If you have contributed to this paper, we're not just, we're paying a price. We're being smeared constantly for basically just telling the truth. And now you know that one of the new papers that's being touted is, oh, isn't it great we have local news again? Well, now you know the rest of the story. It's part of a strategy to bolster and maintain power in city halls and school boards across Metro Vancouver. Well, if they're successful, it may be coming to a town near you. So now you know the rest of the story. So, if you like our journalism and you appreciate what we do, I invite you to go to newwesttimes.com, subscribe to our newsletter, and consider supporting us. Up in the right-hand corner is a button that says support our work. If you would feel so inclined, we would really appreciate it. In the meantime, thanks for watching.